You know that we're up, and I'm 7. All right.
The ground. Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Bye.
Yeah, that's crazy. We're staying down at the Miranda. Hell no. No, the last time we went to...
Hey, how are you?
Marley, you alright?
Yeah.
They start bitching at us about anything yet?
No.
Okay, cool.
How are you?
We'll stay under the radar until somebody in a pink costume shows up.
Yeah, we'll see.
Alright, well, I'm here for you. You know that.
Okay, Diva. I'm here for you too. Like that's what I was saying. Always worth time.
So now we've got this. You guys get
We should be here like any minute.
the second they come in.
Yeah.
Okay. Just throw the backpack on and we're good.
All right, girl. Yeah. Not yet.
Okay, Marley, I'm gonna give you a job,
Huh?
but it's a job that will help us both.
What?
I'm gonna have you hold this above both our heads like that, so you don't get wet and I don't get wet.
Anybody's shot?
Come here, no.
Are you
We're gonna
sure?
we're gonna block the podium because they ain't gonna do anything forever. So we're gonna just be here. We're just not gonna block News Nation though. Come here, slide this way. He's my friend. Slide back, slide back, slide back. There we go. All right, you good now? All right, good. Podium can be blocked. We're good with that. That's us. We're cool. Oh shit! Don't do that. Don't do that, fucker. God damn it. Okay, yeah. The podium has to, you got it.
Hey, aren't we in their shot?
Yeah, is the podium feeding though? I guess he said yeah. So we're gonna pull back. Come here. All right. Keep coming. Keep coming. Okay, now we both say dry, and we get the shot. Does that work?
Yeah.
Boy,
Karen and Mark.
Senate will come to order. This chaplain, Dr. Black, will lead the Senate in prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal Father, strong to save, empower our lawmakers to serve you today, to solve problems and to remove impediments. Give them your higher wisdom as they seek you, the source of their strength. Lord, surround them with the shield of your divine approbation, so that no weapon formed against them will prosper. Almighty God, provide our senators strength for the adventures and challenges of these hours, inspiring them with the courage to oppose falsehood in all of its forms. May your truth, love, and power fill their hearts. We pray in your great name. Amen.
Thank you. Will you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will you?
Under the previous order, the leadership time is reserved. Under the previous order, the Senate will be in a period of morning business, with senators permitted to speak therein for up to 10 minutes each. I recognize the senator from Iowa.
Last week, 2 members of the West Virginia National Guard were tragically shot here on duties in Washington, D.C. They were attacked by an Afghan national brought here under the Biden administration. Sadly, Specialist Beckstrom has passed away. Staff Sergeant Wolf continues to fight for his life. May God bless both of them, and our prayers and mine are with them and their families. Also last week, an Afghan evacuee was arrested for threatening to bomb a building in Texas. The terrorists entered our country as part of a program called Operation Allies Welcome in the aftermath of the Biden administration's chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. Since 2021, I've warned the Biden administration, my congressional allies and colleagues, and the American public about the failure to vet Afghan evacuees. Unfortunately, the Biden administration was not honest with the American people about the program's vetting vulnerabilities. I asked then Director Wray about the program's national security. I asked the same of Director Patel of the FBI this year. And this year, Director of National Intelligence Gabbard told my office an important data point. Of the more than 100,000 Afghan evacuees as of August 2022, 1.6% had links to terrorism or other derogatory information. So when you take that 1 6/10%, that's over 1,600 people who, at that time of the Biden's disastrous evacuation, posed a potential threat to our homeland and to the American people. On July 8th of 2025, I came to this Senate floor and urged the current FBI and intelligence community leadership to aggressively investigate evacuees. In September of this year, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Nome told my office as of August 12th, 2025, thousands of Operation Allies Welcome parolees were potential national security threats. As we have tragically witnessed, the Biden administration's failure to properly vet Afghan evacuees has serious consequences, and probably consequences we haven't seen beyond the killing last week. I think we should thank the Trump administration's efforts, and I thank them for responding to my oversight requests and their efforts to fix the Biden administration's failures. This senator's oversight work will continue. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
I recognize the Democrat leader.
Mr. President, I want to begin with a truly disgusting and alarming piece of news the American people got this morning. This morning, the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, was released from prison after Donald Trump gave him a pardon. We all know that Donald Trump does a lot of hypocritical things. Almost every day, there's hypocrisy oozing from the White House. But pardoning one of the world's biggest drug traffickers is egregious, shameful, and dangerous, even for Donald Trump. It would be bad enough on its own for Donald Trump to pardon this horrible drug trafficker. But for him to pardon this drug lord while putting a quarter of our military in the Caribbean, right nearby Honduras, to fight drug trafficking makes an utter mockery of Donald Trump's supposed desire to root out all drug trafficking. Let's be clear of the facts. The person Donald Trump just pardoned was convicted of helping move 400 tons of cocaine to the United States. All the while, Trump blows up alleged drug boats to prevent drugs from getting to America and risks leapfrogging the U.S. into a war with Venezuela. You can't have it both ways, Mr. President. You can't talk a big game about hunting down drug traffickers and getting drugs off our streets and then turn around and free a dangerous, convicted drug lord. That sends a message to other criminals. Suck up to Trump, and you'll get a pardon no matter how many boatloads of drugs you pump into our streets. Even one Trump advisor admitted that, quote, how we justify this is really hard. Trump's pardon reeks of hypocrisy. It reeks of corruption, which is the MO of the Trump administration. The failure of the leadership at the Department of Defense is also a national embarrassment. The mess Secretary Hegseth creates regularly shows the consequences of picking an inexperienced Fox News host to lead a massively complex life-or-death federal agency. Donald Trump is learning it the hard way. If you pick a Fox News cable host to lead the largest, most complicated federal agency of all, you get burnt. And Hegseth is just way beyond what anyone would imagine in how bad he is at that department. In the past few days, more questions have arisen about Hegseth's order to attack alleged drug trafficking vessels off the coast of Venezuela. It is possible those strikes, which may have included verbal orders from the Secretary of Defense to, quote, kill everybody on those boats, violated the law. But this is the problem. The American people still don't know exactly what happened because Pete Hegseth refuses to tell the truth. Months ago, right after the strikes, Hegseth went on Fox News and bragged. He was present at every moment of the operation. He said on Fox News that he, quote, watched it live. He said the same to us in person. But then last night he tweeted that his admiral was actually the one who made all the combat decisions. This is so spineless. Pete Hegseth won't hesitate for a moment to talk a big game and take credit if he thinks it makes him look good. But the minute trouble arises, suddenly Hegseth says someone else was making the decision. Now let's be very clear about something. There's a very easy way for the American people to get the truth. Pete Hegseth should release the full tapes of the September 2nd attack, both the first and second strike. Not a clip, not some edited or redacted snippet. The full unedited tapes of each strike must be released so the American people can see what happened with their own eyes. Now, Pete Hegseth says he did nothing wrong. So prove it. If it's true, he should have nothing to fear from the truth. But if he refuses to release the tapes, if he stonewalls, if he keeps hiding the facts, then the question becomes unavoidable. What is Pete Hegseth hiding? What does Pete Hegseth not want the American people to see? Is it that his story doesn't add up? We don't know. because Pete Hegseth is right now hiding the truth. And sadly, that has become a theme with this administration. When facts are inconvenienced, they cover up. So, Secretary Hegseth, release the tapes. I also want to commend my Senate colleagues, including the chairman and ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, Senators Wicker and Reed, for working together in good faith in a bipartisan way to conduct oversight of these boat strikes. I support those efforts wholeheartedly. One of the first things we need is a classified briefing from the DoD, the Department of Defense, about exactly what happened during these operations. And let me be clear, Secretary Hegseth must be part of those briefings. We need documentation, and we need the tapes, but we should go one step further. Secretary Hegseth should testify publicly before the committee under oath so that the American people can hear the facts. The truth should not be kept behind closed doors. The fresh air of public scrutiny should be let in. The public has a right to know. That's why Pete Hegseth must testify publicly, and most importantly, why he must release the full tape of the attacks. On health care, let me start with a shockingly candid quote from a senior House Republican on their plan to fix health care. This senior House Republican, when it came to health care, said about the Republicans in the House, "We're nowhere on health care." That's what a senior House Republican said. It's a grim thing to say, but it's the truth. There's never been a clearer divide on what Democrats want on health care and what Republicans want on health care. Democrats want to lower health care costs for families. We want to make health care cheaper, more effective, more accessible. We're united on that issue, from one end of the party to the other. Republicans, meanwhile, are a total mess when it comes to health care. Republicans don't know what to do. One day, Trump floats a so-called health care plan. The next day, Speaker Johnson forces him to shoot it down. Some Republicans say they want to dismantle the ACA, probably a majority of them in the House and a large number in the Senate, just dismantle it altogether. Other Republicans seem more focused on eradicating reproductive care in every state than helping people afford health care. The bottom line, Republicans are in total disarray on health care. And while Republicans continue the infighting, who's paying the price? The American people. The people whose premiums are going up by $500 to $1,000 a month. The people know that these people know that Trump and Republicans are to blame. America, we all know, is in a health care crisis, and Republicans are only adding fuel to the fire. Democrats have been clear from the start. The first step to solve this crisis is extending the ACA tax credits. Democrats are ready to do so. We're united, and we're committed to lowering the cost of health care. Republicans, however, by their own admission, are nowhere on health care, and that's a disastrous message to send to the American people who are suffering from skyrocketing health care costs. I yield the floor. Note the absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alston-Brooks.
I recognize the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. President of the Senate, the quorum call.
Yes.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent the quorum call be suspended.
Without objection.
Mr. President, the Democrat leader was just talking about health care And obviously, there's been a lot of conversation around that here these past few weeks and months. In fact, the Democrats shut down the government for 43 days, the longest shutdown in history, allegedly over health care, although I think we all know that it was Trump derangement syndrome more than anything else that led to the government shutdown. But I would just say, because sometimes you have to kind of take a walk down memory lane to remind people that facts are stubborn things. And facts are stubborn things. The Democrat leader implied that Republicans are not interested in lowering health care costs and that somehow they are. The contrary is actually the truth. If you look at what has happened since the Obamacare exchanges went live over 10 years ago, health care premiums on the exchanges have gone up on average 221%. 221% increase, Mr. President, in health care premiums in the individual marketplace on the Obamacare exchanges. Now, you might ask, why is that? There are a lot of reasons behind it. When they put the law into place in the first place, it was flawed structurally, but then he referred to these so-called Biden COVID bonuses, which were the enhancements that the Democrats now want to lock into place. Now remember, this was done in 2021 with the Democrat majority, Democrat in the White House, under reconciliation. So there wasn't a single Republican who voted for these enhancements in the first place. But remember, they were enhancements designed to be responsive to the pandemic. They were COVID bonuses, only supposed to be temporary. And then in 2022, they extended them again and set them up to expire at the end of this year. This is a problem of Democrats making, Mr. President, pure and simple. And so to suggest for a moment that Republicans somehow aren't interested in lowering health care costs, when in fact it's Democrat policies that have led to the run-up, the rampant increase, 221% increase in premiums since the exchanges went live over 10 years ago. You'd find me anything else in our economy that's seen that kind of an increase over that same time period, Mr. President. That's a staggering increase. And the Biden COVID bonuses that were enacted with all Democrat votes in 2021 and then extended again in 2022 and are set to expire at the end of this year were again designed to be a response to a COVID emergency which no longer exists. So what has happened? They locked in the Biden COVID bonuses that are set to expire at the end of this year, and they expect Republicans now to bail them out. Well, frankly, Mr. President, Republicans are interested in things that will drive down and lower health care costs. The other thing they did in 2022, which is sort of interesting, is that the base Obamacare policies covered people up to 400% of the poverty level. Well, today that's about, for a family of four, $128,000. So in the exchanges, you could get coverage, and if your health care insurance premiums hit a certain percentage of your income, anything above and beyond that was covered by a government subsidy. And that is, in fact, the way that it worked prior to 2021. The Biden COVID bonuses took that cap off, Mr. President. There is no cap. No cap. And so now you have people making $500,000, $600,000 a year who are getting subsidies from the federal government to buy insurance. The other thing they did, Mr. President, they did away with, there's what's called $0 policies or $0 premiums. In other words, there are people out there who pay nothing for coverage. Their coverage is entirely covered by the federal government through the subsidy. Well, what that's done, and because the way the program they structured it, is to provide the subsidies directly to insurance companies. This is called, falsely, a premium tax credit. It is not a tax credit. A tax credit would be something that would lower tax liability dollar for dollar after when you file your income taxes. This is a subsidy, a direct subsidy. And so you have literally millions of people, Mr. President, who have no idea they're covered because they aren't paying anything for it. And the insurance companies are getting the payment. So the insurance companies are incentivized to go out and auto-enroll all these people across the country. And so what you have today are literally millions of people, of the 23 to 24 million people who get their coverage in the exchanges. Millions of those have no idea that they are even covered because the insurance company is getting the subsidy, auto-enrolling them, which might explain why last year 40% of the people who get their insurance coverage through the exchanges didn't file a claim. Now, you could say maybe they're healthy, maybe they're younger. That's all partially true. But do you think 40% of the people in the exchanges didn't file a claim? I mean, think about that. That means there are literally millions of people out there, millions of people who don't know they have coverage. And the insurance companies are getting the payments and making bank at the expense of everybody else in this country. And those who are paying premiums, seeing those premiums go up, as I said, 221% since these exchanges went live 10 years ago. So, Mr. President, this is not something the Republicans, they blame the Republicans for the health care crisis. The health care crisis was created by Democrats with all Democrat votes in 2021 and then again in 2022, setting them up to expire at the end of this year. And with no income limits and $0 premiums and the subsidies going directly to the insurance companies instead of into the pockets of the American people. Now, there is a way better way to do this, but it's going to take cooperation from both sides to do that. And it seems to me, at least, Mr. President, what the Democrats would rather have than a solution is an issue. They want a political issue, and they want to blame Republicans. But you have to come back to the basic premise that facts are stubborn things. These are the facts. 2021, these Biden COVID bonuses went into effect, lifted the cap. So no longer there's no cap. So you can get unlimited amounts of income and still get coverage in the exchanges. $0 premiums. So some people are paying nothing. They're paying nothing for their health insurance premiums. And insurance companies who are incentivized to auto-enroll those very people, in many cases, those people have no idea they're covered. That is a pretty amazing contraption, if you will, and some would argue scam on behalf of the insurance companies in this country, but certainly to the detriment of the American people who do need more affordable coverage. They need to be able to afford health care along with the other things that they buy on a daily basis. And people need access to health care in this country, Mr. President, and they need affordability when it comes to health care in this country. And so I would say, Mr. President, that there is a path forward here. It can't happen unless there are significant reforms. Because you can't have people who are making unlimited amounts of money being able to qualify for government subsidies in these exchanges. Nor should you have, in my view, people who pay absolutely nothing, not $1 for coverage, getting coverage, and insurance companies being incentivized because they get a subsidy for doing it to cover these very people who don't even know they're covered. That is a really, really bizarre business model. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. And now Democrats are saying, oh, we created this, but it's your problem. Please, please fix it. Or if you don't do something that will extend this program that has costs, premiums that continue to go up like this for the American people, we will use it against you in a political campaign as a political issue. That is the state of play right now, Mr. President, which is why we need a solution, and a solution that brings us back to where the American people have options, where there are some sort of income limits, where there are people at least paying something for their coverage, where the insurance companies aren't being enriched at the expense of the American people, where the American people have choices and options to get the plan that they want that works for them and for their families. That's a business model that works. Competition, optionality, market forces, driving down prices, giving the American people more choices to buy the insurance they want at a price that they can afford. That, Mr. President, is a business model. The business model that we're operating under today was created by the Democrats, and now there's some expectation that somehow the Republicans are supposed to come here and fix the problem that they created. So, Mr. President, let me get back to my remarks here and start by saying that last month, the incoming mayor of New York City, who's a leading voice in today's Democratic Party, promised New Yorkers, and I quote, "We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about." No problem too large, no concern too small for government to get involved. That was the quote, Mr. President. Mr. President, that's a dangerous way of thinking. It's a license for government growing unbounded. And it's a recipe for expanded bureaucracy and greater frustration for Americans who are just trying to live their lives. But growing government is the driving philosophy of the Democratic Party. And you can just look at the Biden years. We had the federal government mandating masks for 2-year-olds outside, not in a building, outside, for 2-year-olds. The EPA regulating puddles and saddling farmers and ranchers with massive compliance costs, something that we experienced in my state of South Dakota. Electric vehicle mandates. If they'd had their way, by next year, Mr. President, 35% of the vehicles on the highway would be EVs. 35%. You know what that number is today? It's about 10, 11, maybe 12. There's no way. No way that could have been complied with. And a reckless tax and spending spree that caused a years-long inflation crisis. Inflation got up the double-digit range, Mr. President, something we haven't seen in several decades. Mr. President, Republicans have spent the last year cleaning up from the consequences of Democrats' big government philosophy. President Trump has repealed a number of burdensome regulations and rules. And here in Congress, we've used the Congressional Review Act to repeal rules, regulations, and mandates that were creeping into seemingly every facet of Americans' lives. That includes 4 separate rules on appliances. That's right. Last year, appliances became the latest focus of Democrats' radical environmental agenda. One rule applied expensive, unnecessary new standards to commercial fridges and freezers, the kind used in restaurants and grocery stores. The Energy Department estimated that it would take 90 years for a business to see savings from these more expensive appliances. Another rule sought to take gas water heaters off the market, raising costs for homeowners and imperiling American manufacturing jobs. And then there were the Biden administration's proposed reporting and certification requirements for everything from light bulbs and dishwashers to dehumidifiers and air conditioners. Reporting and certification requirements may not sound like much, Mr. President, but those requirements mean a lot of front-end work that has to be done, work that costs time and money, can place a huge burden on businesses and drive up prices for consumers. In its public comments on the Biden administration's appliance standards, Carrier, an appliance manufacturer, said the Department of Energy failed to adequately account for, and I quote, the cost and burden to comply with updated requirements, end quote. A manufacturers association said that the proposed reporting standards had, and I quote, no practical utility, end quote. And another objected to what they called, quote, burden without benefit. Mr. President, thanks to Republicans' efforts, hardworking Americans and small businesses have been spared these costly regulations. We've also been able to dismantle Democrats' regulatory assault on Americans' cars. President Trump repealed the Biden administration's electric vehicle mandate. And here in Congress, we approved legislation to repeal waivers that would have allowed California to impose a de facto electric vehicle mandate on the whole country. We also passed a CRA resolution repealing the Biden rubber tire manufacturing rule, a gross example of unnecessary regulation. The Biden administration proposed new emission standards for tire manufacturers, an industry that's already subject to strict emissions rules. And the Biden rule, while it would have reduced the emission of certain pollutants, would have actually increased emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. That's right, Mr. President, you can't make that up. It would have increased emissions of carbon dioxide and methane. And it would have cost tire manufacturers $13 million per year and possibly more than that. Mr. President, unfortunately, these are not the only examples of the overreach of the Biden administration's Green New Deal-style regulations. No, the Biden administration also went after energy production, heaping additional costs and restrictions on energy producers that would have driven energy costs higher and higher. Earlier this year, Republicans repealed the Biden administration's marine archaeology rule. Energy producers are already required to submit an archaeological report before drilling in areas that are thought to include things like shipwrecks, settlements, and other archaeological sites. But the Biden administration wanted energy producers to submit reports even when there's no reason to suspect a project will be near an archaeological site. It was just another way to slow down production and heap more costs on energy producers, costs that would eventually have been paid by American consumers. Well, Mr. President, Republicans repealed that rule. Then there was Democrats' natural gas tax. In 2022, Democrats enacted a tax on methane emissions from natural gas producers, a tax that would have driven up energy prices and destroyed jobs in the energy sector. Republicans repealed its regulatory implementation through the CRA, the Congressional Review Act process, and then blocked this misguided tax in the One Big Beautiful Bill this summer. Mr. President, our efforts continue. A few weeks ago, the Senate passed a resolution blocking the Biden administration's restriction on energy development in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, an area established specifically for the purpose of providing the United States with energy resources. The Biden administration tried to close a significant portion of it. But when President Trump signs this resolution and repeals these restrictions, we will once again be able to leverage these abundant natural resources for the benefit of the American people. Mr. President, regulations have consequences. Democrats may believe there is nothing that couldn't be improved by little government intervention. But Republicans, and I think the American people, know what too often happens when government decides to get involved. As President Reagan said 40 years ago, and I quote, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, 'I'm from the government, and I'm here to help,'" end quote. When I'm talking to business owners in South Dakota, I often tell them to let me know how we can help, even if that means getting out of the way. And, Mr. President, that's often the right answer. While some regulations are necessary, too often regulations do more harm than good. And regulations mean costs, costs that are almost always passed on to the consumer. Republicans are continuing our efforts to get government out of the way and to bring down costs for the American people. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
President.
I recognize the Majority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, each year I look forward to spending Thanksgiving with Wyoming men and women in uniform who are serving overseas. I had the privilege of doing it again this year. This Thanksgiving, I was with Wyoming airmen at Ramstein Air Force Base, which is in Germany. These young men and women came from Casper, Cheyenne, Riverton, serving our nation. They're doing an outstanding job in their work in supporting the missions in Europe, in Asia, and in the Middle East. They're a long way from home, 8 time zones away from Wyoming, away from family, away from friends, away for the holidays. And I go every year, wherever I can find Wyoming troops, to thank them for their service, to thank them for their commitment, to thank them for what they do to keep us safe and to keep us free, and the sacrifices that they're making. And I also want them to know that the people at home are thinking about them and know that they're a long way from home and caring for all of us. To me, they're heroes. They wear the uniform not for their safety, but for ours. And we see it abroad, and we also see it at home. What we've seen at home is since August, National Guard troops have been deployed right here in Washington, D.C. As a result, Washington, D.C. is safer for residents and for visitors, for people who come from your state and from mine, who want to come and see the nation's capital. What we've seen since this has begun is the number of murders, rapes, and robberies has fallen dramatically. Tragically, just one day before Thanksgiving, 2 members of the National Guard were targeted. It was an ambush attack, and it happened just blocks away from the White House. It was an act of terrorism. The act was not only on our National Guardsmen, it was on our entire nation. One of the service members, Sarah Beckstrom, well, she was an Army specialist from West Virginia. She died on Thanksgiving Day. She was only 20 years old. The other is Andrew Wolf. He's a staff sergeant in the Air Force, also from West Virginia, 24 years old. He remains hospitalized in critical condition, fighting for his life. And we join all Americans in praying for them and their families. The terrorist who attacked them was an Afghan national. He's one of tens of thousands of Afghans who were flown into our country following Joe Biden's disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. We now know for a fact that thousands of these individuals were not properly vetted. I specifically questioned Joe Biden's Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, here in the Senate about this, and I questioned him under oath. And under oath, he testified, Joe Biden's Secretary of State, that, quote, most of them were not vetted. Didn't matter to Joe Biden. He waved them all into our country. Republicans warned repeatedly that bringing people without proper clearance from a war-torn country was a major national security risk. The negligent Biden administration ignored the warning. In 2021, 13 American heroes were killed in the botched withdrawal from Kabul, Afghanistan. One of them was Wyoming's own Riley McCullum. He embodied the best of Wyoming. He was a Marine. He joined the Marines on his 18th birthday. I spoke at his funeral. He was Wyoming's wrestling champion. He was about to become a father. He was just 20 years old when he died. He was the same age as Sarah Beckstrom from West Virginia. The fallout from Joe Biden's disastrous decision hurt Americans then, and it continues to hurt Americans today. President Trump and Republicans are working to reverse these failures. The president is strengthening law enforcement. He's deporting criminals who are here in our country illegally, and he's taking a hard look at anyone who has been improperly vetted. His actions will make America safer and more secure. Joe Biden's disgraceful withdrawal was not an isolated failure. It was part of a pattern of dangerous, destructive, and deadly policies. More than 10 million illegal immigrants entered our country under Joe Biden and the Democrats. Millions more are known gotaways. They are individuals who were seen by the Border Patrol but never charged, never stopped, never questioned. How many more terrorists slipped into our country because Democrats threw open the borders? Where are they now? What are they up to? We don't know. Most Americans understand that national security begins with border security. That means we must stop people from entering our country illegally. It means we must ensure dangerous individuals do not enter our country even through legal means. And it certainly means we must remove dangerous criminals who are in the country today. As the Trump administration recently warned, mass migration poses an existential threat to Western civilizations. So what do the Democrats think? Well, on Sunday on Face the Nation, CBS asked the junior senator from Virginia if the vetting process should be strengthened after the shooting. Now, that's exactly what President Trump is doing.
The senator refused to answer that question. Instead, he told a national television audience that having the National Guard in Washington, D.C. was a, quote, political stunt. He blamed President Trump. Political stunt, it's a matter of public safety. President Trump is the one who is protecting American citizens from terrorist attacks, attacks like the one witnessed last week just in front of the White House. President Trump and Republicans want every American to be safe, to be secure, and to be prosperous.